Okay, so this is a sikha from Chelik Gimel Lakutei Sichos, which is or maybe Chelik Beis. Chelik Gimel, I don't remember for sure. Chelik Beis Lakutei Sichos, but it tends to be in a way like all over the place. It like covers a lot of different topics, but they all actually relate to two things. First of all, this week's parsha is established the whole concept of the Jewish lunar calendar. We say that Moshe Rabbeinu was told in this week's parsha, HaChodesh Hazeh, this month of Nisan, in which Pesach comes out, the month where the Jewish people would leave Mitzrayim, is Rishon Hu Lachem L'Chodshei Achshana. It's the first of the months of the year. And it's Rosh Chodesh. It's the head of all the months. So the Jewish calendar has something very strange. When it comes to counting the years, we count it from Tishrei. So when we go from 5784 to 5785, that's on Tishrei. Because in that regard, when it comes to the years, we follow a solar calendar. But when it comes to the months, which is also how we establish the dates of the Yom Tov, so we follow a lunar calendar. And the first month of the year is the month of Nisan. And there's different reasons for that. We're not going to get into that in this sikha. And the olden times, they used to actually physically have to witness the new moon in Eretz Yisrael. And based on when they witnessed the new moon, that's when they established was the first day of the Hebrew month. These days, we do it by mathematical calculations that's based on what they did then. Now, we're going to focus in the sikha about the idea of Rosh Chodesh in its spiritual meaning. This also fits in beautifully because today also was Rosh Chodesh. Today is Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So it says, "L'paska Chodesh Elohim Rosh Chodeshim Namar b'Shalom." The Shalo Kodesh says a very interesting thing. Shekol haChodesh Nisan kol yom mimenu hu kirosh Chodesh. It says haChodesh Hazeh this month is Rosh Chodesh. What's it mean, the head of months? So, the simple meaning is, it's the first of the other months. But that already says, Rishon Hu Lachem L'Chodshei Hashana. So what's this expression, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodeshim? Rosh Chodeshim is the plural of the word Rosh Chodesh, which means the entire month, the Shalo says, every day of the month of Chodesh Nisan is a Rosh Chodesh. That's what it means, a deeper meaning. It's not the simple meaning of the text. HaChodesh Hazeh, this month of Nisan, the entire month of Nisan, Rosh Chodeshim, every single day in the month is considered like Rosh Chodesh. And he says, we see this in actuality concerning different things, the way we observe the month of Nisan. Later on the sikha, we're going to speak about certain limitations when it comes to work on Rosh Chodesh. For example, women have a minhag not to do like intensive labors like doing the laundry or knitting or sewing and things like that on Rosh Chodesh. In general, in Tanakh, it's referred to as not a regular work day, even though we'll talk about that technically it's like a regular weekday. So the same thing, just like Rosh Chodesh is not a Yom HaMaaseh, Kach Kol Chodesh Nisan. Vashalom Mevayer, how is that the entire month of Nisan? So if you remember, the whole entire month of Nisan, we don't say Tachnun, for the same reason that he's going to say that every day is almost like Rosh Chodesh. B'shnei Masra Yom HaRishonim Hayu Karbonos HaNesim, V'chol Nasi Haya Oisi Yom Tov B'Oisei HaYom. For the first 12 days of the month of Nisan, when they first erected the Mishkan in the Midbar, every leader of a different tribe brought a carbon. The first day was Yehuda, the second day was Yisachar, and so on. Now, when a person brought a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan, it was considered their own personal Yom Tov. Leaders of tribes, they represented the entire tribe. So by extension, it was a Yom Tov for their tribe as well. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean a Yom Tov that you can't drive a car, but the point is, it was different than an ordinary day. Yud Gimel Nisan, who Isru Chag for Yud Beis Yomim. Just like the day after Yom Tov is a special day called Isru Chag, the same thing after the 12 days that the different heads of tribes brought their kabbanas. So the 13th day of Nisan is also has something unique to it. We know on the night going in from the 13th of Nisan to the day before Pesach, the 14th of Nisan, it's when we light a candle to do B'dikas Chametz. So the Shalo explains the lighting of the candle is, we're talking about also kindling our own soul candle, that every Yid has a candle within themselves. And therefore we have to search out the negative, the Chametz, and get rid of it. There's 7 days of Pesach, which is the cycle that everything is in a cycle of 7. So therefore it comes out that almost the entire month of Nisan is celebratory. The 12 days, followed by the 13th day was the Isru Chag, then the day where we check the Chametz, and then followed by another 7 days. So it comes out that the majority of the month has all special days, and in that way it could be similar to Rosh Chodesh. So that's what the meaning is when the Shalo says that every day of the month of Nisan is like Rosh Chodesh. So now here the Rebbe is going to bring out what is the real meaning, the deeper meaning of Rosh Chodesh, and that's what mainly a lot of the Sikh is going to talk about throughout. It's the time of the birth of the new moon. That includes in it 2 points. Nekuda achas tachlis hahelm shalafnei hamoiled, and then the second thing is nekudas hamoiled. Every Rosh Chodesh encompasses and is a bridge between 2 things. The time when the moon is not yet visible, when the evening sky is completely dark as far as the moon is concerned, and then that moment of transition from complete darkness of the moon to the visibility of the moon. That 2 states is the bridge that Rosh Chodesh deals with. Base, Gamba Avodas Bnei Yisrael Shanim Shulavonam Yeshnam Shtei Nekudas Elam. It says the Jewish people do a lunar calendar because they are likened to the moon. Just like the moon has ups and downs, so too the Jewish people has times when they're up and times when not so much up. So the Jewish people also have this type of bridge between these 2 points. Person thinks about who he is, what's he accomplishing, what level he's at. A Jew realizes he's always in the presence of the king. It's not just when he's davening or doing something else holy, but 24/7 he's always in the presence of the king. And we know that if a person does something in front of the king that doesn't show utmost respect to the king, so then he could forfeit his life. So a Jew realizing that he's always in the presence of the king, as great as he is and as devoted as he is, realizes that there's still much more to go. So therefore, based on that, when a person is standing in front of someone that's great, for those of us that had the opportunity to stand in front of the Rebbe, for example, on the one hand, we lose ourselves completely. We're completely at a loss of self. Our entire ego fades away because we're in the presence of someone that's so awesome and so much beyond everything. On the other hand, it's also supposed to jumpstart us, and this is what the Rebbe always encouraged us. Yes, having Bitul is a great thing, but it's supposed to jumpstart us to, okay, now we have to go much further and much greater than what we did before. That's, again, the bridge of Rosh Chodesh between the total darkness where the moon is not visible whatsoever, that's the Bitul component, and then the new moon indicating a totally new avodah, a totally new service. That Teshuvah comprises 2 points. Asura mikan eskarev l'sham, like it says by Moshe Rabbeinu, when he saw the burning bush, he said, I will move away from here to go closer to there. In other words, if you want to become close to Hashem, you need to leave some of your baggage behind, or you need to leave all your baggage behind. That's again, these 2 points. The moment before the new moon, and when the new Avodah begins, the new moon. Day Avodah Teshuvah, Meviim, top of the next page. As Geulah. Teshuvah has to do with redemption, brings the redemption. Poisek Rambam Yisrael oisim Teshuvah miyad negolim shvich ad morazok and amir beger Teshuvah beinyan birchas hashiveinu. The Alter Rebbe says that the order in the brachas and Shemoneh Esrei have a very they're building one upon each other. There's a lot of places that speak about the order of the brachas and Shemoneh Esrei. So the Alter Rebbe says, first we ask Hashiveinu, we're asking for Hashem to assist us to do Teshuvah. And Shemiyad Lacher Birchas Hashiveinu, immediately afterwards, Uslach Lanu. And we're asking for Hashem's forgiveness, because if we're doing Teshuvah, so then we need to ask forgiveness. Then we're asking, or we're saying the bracha of redemption, because redemption follows on the heels of Teshuvah. So Rosh Chodesh has to do with Teshuvah as well, and which brings to the redemption. There's an interesting carbon that was brought on Rosh Chodesh that was like a carbon chatas. Chatas is the word chet, a sin offering. Now, normally, other occasions when public karbanos were brought in celebration of different Yom Tovim, whatever was it Pesach or Shavuos or Rosh Hashanah, this carbon that's a chatas was not brought. It was Rosh Chodesh, there was this carbon chatas brought. The question is why? Why is a carbon that has to do with a sin offering brought on Rosh Chodesh? A sin offering is a private offering usually. When a person does something, let's say, unintentionally, he brings a chatas. Why Rosh Chodesh? So the Medrash says like this, Hashem is saying, bring this chatas for me, this sin offering for me. I need atonement. What do I need atonement for? Because I lessened the moon. We know the story that when Hashem first created the world, the sun and the moon were of equal stature. The moon then complained, how can you have two luminaries at the same time? So Hashem said, okay, you'll be smaller. But even though that was by the moon's own problems, it's the moon's own issues, still in all, Hashem felt that he needs a kapara for it, as we'll soon explain. In Kabbalah, the minimization, the decrease of the moon is also symbolic of, in general, all types of levels throughout the whole chain order of descent of the worlds being decreased, that the godly divine energy is decreased. Just like the moon takes the sunlight and makes it less. Once Hashem's divine energy and light decreases, so then that could allow for sin. If there wouldn't have been a decrease in the moon's light with the accompanying and corresponding decrease of the spiritual and divine energy in this world, in other words, Hashem would have been revealed in this world, there wouldn't have been any possibility for sin, including the sin of the tree of knowledge. That's why Hashem says, I need an atonement, because I'm also like a participant in this Aveda. I had a part in it. I also caused this. We know the sin of the Eitz Hadas was the one that opened up the possibility for all other sins. Before there was the sin of the Eitz Hadas, there couldn't have been any types of sin, which is also the Sibas HaGolus. The sins are a cause for exile. Like we say in Musaf and Shabbos. Rosh Chodesh mesalek es inyan miut hayireach or mele gama sibas hagolas. What's the idea of the new moon? The new moon is about, okay, let's build it up again. Let's start from scratch. Let's start anew. let's start anew. That's a potential now for wiping the slate clean and for making it, transforming all the negative into positive to bring the Geulah. Derech Agav, in the world, it's very common that the day before Rosh Chodesh, it's a very special day. They recite special slichas. Some people fast. It's called Yom Kippur Katan. The Rebbe would always go to the Ohel on Erev Rosh Chodesh. It was one of the standard times when the Rebbe would go to the Ohel to visit the grave of his father-in-law. And when the Rebbe went there, he didn't eat. So he spent the whole day standing on his feet in the Ohel, often in the cold, reading petitions of people and so on, while fasting. But be that as it may, we see that Rosh Chodesh has to do with this idea of kaparas avonos, the idea of atonement, and the idea of Teshuvah, which brings to Geulah. Rosh Chodesh inyan ha-Teshuvah, mesalkes ha-golus, u'mevis ha-Geulah. Ze eifoi teichen ha-omer b'shallah sheklalos chodesh nisnu in Rosh Chodesh. Now we can understand the inner meaning behind what the Shalo is trying to say. He's not just trying to say, okay, there's a whole bunch of mini holidays in Nisan, so therefore it's like Rosh Chodesh, which is a mini Yom Tov also. If we look at the inner meaning of Rosh Chodesh, and we examine the inner meaning of Nisan, we see that they have this common denominator. The Rebbe says in other places that when we find a certain common denominator between two things, often that common denominator is an external common denominator that's only a gauge of something that's going on internally. So in other words, the fact that Nisan has like all these celebrated days, similar to how Rosh Chodesh is celebrated, is not the core of the issue. It's a result. It's a symptom. The core of the issue is Geulah. Shekein ben Nisan yeshna ha'avodah shel bir chametz. What's the idea of removing chametz? We know chametz is something that rises. Matzah remains flat. The rising of the chametz indicates a person's rising ego. Siluk hayeshes ve'isnasus. The ridding ourselves of chametz is removing one's ego. V'lifal in his battles to reach a state of being nullified. That's why Nisan is a month of Geulah, because it has to do with Teshuvah, has to do with getting rid of the Chametz, and that's why the whole month of Nisan has to do with Rosh Chodesh, because Rosh Chodesh is also about Teshuvah, it's also about Geulah. So here we see the inner connection that's expressed by the outer thing. Just to give you a side example of this thing, which the Rebbe always emphasizes, that there's an inner association that causes an outer expression. When we say that, let's say, two words have the same gematria, the same numerical equivalent, that's a result, the Rebbe says, of something deeper, a deeper connection. That's why the Rebbe says, not everybody is free to go ahead and play around with gematrias. If you know the deeper connection between them, then you could start saying, give a look, they have a numerical equivalent. But you can't do the other way around and say, they have a numerical equivalent, that means they're connected. No, I need to see an inner connection between them. The same thing over here. It's not just Rosh Chodesh is a day where work is minimized, and Nisan is a day where work is minimized. No, there's an inner connection between Rosh Chodesh and Nisan, the idea of Teshuvah, the idea of Geulah. And because of that inner connection, the Shalo says that every day of Nisan is Rosh HaChodesh Hazeh, Rosh Chodesh, in this entire month, every single day is like Rosh Chodesh. Okay. Now the Rebbe is going to talk about Rosh Chodesh in general, the term and the word Rosh Chodesh, the expression Rosh Chodesh. L'chayre dalet mesayreres kushim adun nikras nikrosh chodesh b'shem zev v'loit chilos hachodesh. Head of month should be called the beginning of the month. Kush yizunim tzas gam b'teres achsidus l'gabe Rosh Hashanah madun nikrahu b'shem b'rosh Hashanah v'loit chilos Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah has the same question. Head of the year should be called the beginning of the year. Hateret hanarim b'teres achsidus l'gabe Rosh Hashanah. Toiv gam l'gabe Rosh Chodesh, you could apply the same explanation that used by Rosh Hashanah for Rosh Chodesh. Hatam l'shem Rosh Hashanah v'loit chilos Hashanah nemar l'fishay Rosh Hashanah ein rak Reishisa shel Hashana kim gam harosh shel Hashana. Ulefichach nikra b'shem Rosh Hashanah. The head has a special meaning to it, as he's about to explain. Using the word head does not just mean the beginning. Kishem sharosh meichel b'soiches hayunis shala hayvorim. Oid lefnei shi magia leim v'kach lachar shachayunis mefiyam and arosh shala hayvorim harei kshur adayim b'chayunis sheberosh u'moich. Kach Rosh Hashanah koil es achayunis shal kol hayomim b'shana ha'avra v'gam la'achar meken kishem kvar mefiyam tzrichim hem liyas kshurim hem rosh Hashanah. The head has in it two aspects in its relationship with the rest of the body. One aspect is the head has the entire vitality and energy of the entire body comes and is derived from the head. The fact that I can move my hands, I can move my feet, that my stomach can digest, that my lungs can breathe, that my heart can pump, all of this energy comes and all this direction originally sits in the head. And from the head, it expands into the entire body. And even once it expanded into the entire body, the head is still directing it. So we see this interesting nature of the head. The term head is something that is the source of everything and also directs it once the things came out of its source. Once we understand that idea of a head, we can understand the relationship between Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, and the rest of the year. Yemei Hashanah kulak shurim b'Rosh Hashanah. Kloimer b'chol Hashanah tzarich liyas mergeshes hayisoides b'hoya shari adam b'Rosh Hashanah. Ubemyuchad b'nakabal soil shuin yonish Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, a Jew is inspired. And the life force and vitality for the entire year comes down from Rosh Hashanah, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. That inspiration could sometimes dissipate. You go through Yom Kippur, you go through Sukkot, it's past Cheshvan, it's a few months later. What I was feeling on Rosh Hashanah could like be gone. So he's saying no. That feeling of devotion to Hashem, Kabbalah's oil, needs to continue, just like the head continues directing the energy and like vitality in the body, even once every part of the body is functioning. What does it Rosh Hashanah have to do with the idea of Kabbalah soil? Shari mitzayim b'shoifer v'amr chazal imr l'fanei malchis k'deish tam l'chuni aleichem chulu b'ameh b'shoifer u'melech shtei masei aleichem. The idea of shofar is to make Hashem a king over us. What does it mean, be a king? That I stand in awe of the king. There's a difference between a teacher and a king. A king is someone who you need to have what's called Bitul before him. So that expression of Bitul and self-abnegation that I have to the king, to Hashem, during Rosh Hashanah, needs to also continue throughout the year, and it's energized from that the entire year. So just like Rosh Hashanah has that relationship with all the rest of the days of the year, the same thing, Rosh Chodesh has the same relationship with the rest of the days of the month. Here he doesn't say the following, but in other Ma'amar Chassidus he says that the energy and vitality that comes from Rosh Hashanah will first come down into all the 12 Rosh Chodeshes, and from every Rosh Chodesh, that initial vitality that came down for Rosh Hashanah will come down for the rest of that month. So, for the vitality and energy for the entire month of Shvat comes down today. Today, Rosh Chodesh Shvat came out of from Rosh Hashanah, and then in Rosh Chodesh Shvat it has the energy for the entire month of Shvat, and it will come out in every day accordingly. But zeh afatam bottom of the page elkach Rosh Chodesh nikra b'shem zeh v'loy b'shem tchilas hachodesh lefi Rosh Chodesh einay rak hascholas hachodesh ki im gam haroy shel hachodesh Rosh Chodesh koilol bekirbay as kol chiyunius hachodesh kulay v'gam la'acher mekain. Even once the days come out of Rosh Chodesh, even when you get to the last day of Rosh Chodesh, Mekablim Yemei HaChodesh as chiyoniyusam mei Rosh Chodesh. They keep on receiving their energy just like the rest of the body receives its energy from the head. Lamrois Rosh Chodesh hu yom hamuter b'melacha. Moitzim anu b'tanach as Rosh Chodesh she'eina nimna ben shar yemei ha'maisa ki im nimna l'chud. We know, for example, the famous story with David and Shaul and Yehonasan, that they invited him for a Rosh Chodesh meal. Rosh Chodesh was a celebratory time. It was a time that, even though, again, it wasn't like Yom Tov or Shabbos, it wasn't a day that you were completely prohibited from doing work, but it wasn't an ordinary day. It was treated differently. Just like we have in davening, we have Hallel, we have Musaf, and so on. Hatam l'kachu, lamroi sheresh chodesh muter b'melacha, shaloi ki b'Shabbos v'Yom Tov. Uboi kayamim kol uvnin d'choil, eina doime l'chol yemei ha'choil, u'kemailus yitzira ibriya l'gaba asiyah. It's still different than the rest of the days of the week. Similar to in Chassidus, where it brings down the difference between the world of Bria in comparison to the world of Asiyah, or the difference between the world of Yitzira and the world of Asiyah. I'll leave that for the Mekubalim. Habitui bekesher la'asiyas malach b'sheish yemei ha'choil hu sheishes yamim ta'avoid. It's very interesting when the Torah tells us about not doing work on Shabbos. It doesn't just say, you know, when the seventh day comes, don't do any work. It doesn't say that. It starts off, Sheishes Yamim Tavid, 6 days, you shall work. The simple meaning is, you may work. But the wording sounds much stronger. Shugam Loshin Shal Tzivui. You shall work. You should work. This is a mitzvah for you to work during the 6 days of the week. Lamroi shapirish hapashu tu shemoteres asiyas melacha. Nemar aval b'teres achsidus kvi shemash magam loshen hakosav shebesheish yemei ha'choil yesh lasis melacha. Kein mash makach b'miktzas meloshen medrash rabba la'avda sheishis yom tavid. It says that when Hashem placed Adam in Gan Eden, He placed him there le'avda u'le'shamra, to work Gan Eden and to guard it. So the Medrash identifies what is the working, as it says, Sheishes Yamim Tavid. So we find already from the times of Adam Arishon, there was already incumbent upon man the obligation to work during the time when one should work. The question is, why? Why work? Shouldn't we get, let's say, everything we need from Hashem directly? No need to go to work. Let's rely on Hashem. Hatam l'chayvus hamlach b'sheish yemei ha'choilu l'fishay dehais askus b'mlach al pitoira noitzer l'mayla ha'inyan shal sheishes yom osa havaya. Kaloimrai deis askus b'sheish yemei ha'choil nimsheches ha'ora l'kis lahavis lahachis ha'ilmis k'vishim l'beshes b'tev. It says a very interesting thing over here. We know that the origination of the mitzvah of Shabbos comes from the fact that just like Hashem worked on 6 days, and on the 7th day He rested, so too we should rest on the 7th day. But that's not it. That's not entirely the whole picture. Just like He worked on 6 days, we have to work on 6 days also. And what was His work? His work was investing Himself in the creation. Hashem's divine energy enclosed itself in the world for 6 days to be engaged with the world. This is called the level of the godly revelation that has to do with nature, that's hidden within nature. So we have to connect with that natural expression of Hashem's interaction with the world by us looking for a natural means of making a living. Not sitting back and saying Hashem will provide, but rather working for 6 days, just like Hashem engaged naturally with the world during creation. The flip side of that is Shabbos. Shabbos asur b'melacha mishum sha'Shabbos nailis misheishes yom asa avayim. B'Shabbos me'ira ha'ora l'kis kifi she'eino melubeshes u'musteres b'levushi ha'teva. Ach me'acher v'ateva atzmei mekoyre b'lamayla min ha'teva, nechshav ki malacha rak inyan shebamishkan cheshiva. So, what the Rebbe is saying goes over here, Shabbos, when Hashem rested, that's when Hashem withdrew from nature. So we also have to withdraw from nature and tap in to the divine energy that transcends the natural. Instead of during the week when we engage and are connecting with the divine energy that's embedded in nature. The question is, why specifically the 39 malachas that we're not allowed to do on Shabbos? Why not other things? Because for something to be considered valuable enough within the world of nature, so we look to the Mishkan. The Mishkan was a place where Hashem told us to do work to make a dwelling place for Him. From those 39 labors that we did in erecting the Mishkan, we derived all the different labors that we are prohibited to do on Shabbos, because the labors of the Mishkan are important enough to be considered natural engagement with the world, which we have to remove ourselves from on Shabbos, because we're trying to connect with the supernatural, with the transnatural, the transcendent aspect of Hashem beyond nature. Rosh Chodesh is not like Shabbos, but it's also not like weekday. It's somewhere in between. Shabbos transcends nature. Weekday, Hashem's powers are invested in nature. Rosh Chodesh is where nature itself becomes transcendent. But Rosh Chodesh, Aymirim Halel, Makrivim Karban Musaf in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, Tosefes Al Kol HaYamim. It's called Musaf. Karban Musaf, what's the meaning of the word Musaf? When we say we're davening Musaf, it's because in the Beis HaMikdash there was a Karban Musaf. Why was it called a Karban Musaf? Because on certain days of the year, Rosh Chodesh, Yamim Tovim, Shabbos, there was an additional musaf in the word Haisafa. There was an additional carbon over the standard Tmidim, Karbanis, and so on. So that indicates that Rosh Chodesh falls into that category of something extra. Because Rosh Chodesh, we have a musaf carbon, which we don't have during the rest of the days of the year. Rosh Chodesh mahave aprat mesiyamim memutza ben Shabbos or ben Yemei HaChoil. It's a bridge. Similar to how we said before, Rosh Chodesh itself is a bridge between darkness and birth. The same thing, Rosh Chodesh is a bridge between the transcendent and that which permeates. B'Shabbos she'eres ha'noga shel ha'mayla ma'ateva, b'mei ha'choil ha'noga shel piteva, v'ilu b'Rosh Chodesh yesh lahav yesh l'mayla ma'ateva el ha'teva. Shabbos, beyond nature. Weekdays, in nature. Rosh Chodesh takes the experience of Shabbos, the transcendent nature of Shabbos, and brings it into the weekday. That's why we actually say Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. The Rebbe is going to point out, there's an interesting halacha. You're not allowed to say Hallel constantly. If you praise something or someone the whole time, non-stop, it can be considered, as we'll soon bring the Gemara, not even complimentary, it can be considered poking fun. They say a story of, I think it was Reb Shmelke of Nikolsburg, that he once arrived at a certain city. I don't remember if he arrived at a city that they had appointed him to be the Rav, or he just came to visit. And he said, before he greets the crowd, he wants to have a private room for himself for an hour. And there was a certain person that felt that who knows what type of great spiritual things Reb Shmelke would be doing, so he decided he's going to hide in the room and see what is Reb Shmelke doing over there in this room. So he hears Reb Shmelke start talking to himself. He says, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Shmelke. It's so wonderful to have you here, Rabbi Shmelke. It's such an honor for us to have you here, Rabbi Shmelke. And he goes on and on and on, heaping praises and words of all types of, titles and everything. Welcome the great tzaddik Rabbi Shmelke, talking to himself. The guy was, what's this? What's this all about? Somehow, he finally either blurted out then or later, what were you doing? So he said, I knew that when I come into the city and everybody would come out to greet me, they'd be showering me with all these titles. I didn't want it to go to my head. So by saying this so many times to myself, it became completely cheapened to the extent that it was completely silly in my mind to even hear these words. In a similar vein, we're soon going to have this idea that to say Hallel the whole time is actually considered making fun. Hallel is reserved for certain specific dates in the year. Let's see it inside. B'chol yom ein oimrim Hallel hagemara imeres adrab. Kol la'oimer Hallel b'chol yom harei mecharef u'megadev. He's making fun of Hashem. Gam Shabbos, even Shabbos, ein oimrim Hallel. Uber Rosh Chodesh oimrim Hallel. What's the significance of Hallel? What's the subject that Hallel speaks about? If we look at other parts of davening, we see it's distinct than Hallel. Let's say we look in Psukei de Zimra, or even the brachas before and after Krishma, the majority of what it speaks about over there, and even in Shemoneh Esrei, the majority of what it speaks about in regular, ordinary days davening is about the natural running of the world. We're talking about the weekday davening. It talks about the sun coming up, the sun setting, how the world is run, how Hashem directs everything in the world, how Hashem looks over the Jewish people. It's not so much focused on the miraculous. Hallel is talking a lot about Hashem's miraculous intervention and help in this world. That transcendent idea. But again, it's a bridge. Why? Like we said before, that Hashem's bracha resides only in what you do. You cannot rely on a miracle. You need to work to be able to have Hashem's bracha come down. In other words, the natural world. The weekdays is about marking the natural world and God working in the natural world. Gam b'Shabbos ein oimrim Hallel. If you should b'Shabbos lo yisasach ovalacha. Mi shetarach b'erev Shabbos yochel amel b'Shabbos. Shabbos, it's also something that you need to prepare from beforehand. Nobody sits down on Shabbos and says the food will be there. No, you need to work. It's a mitzvah to prepare before Shabbos. Even in the midbar, you have to collect 2 portions on Friday to be able to have ready for Shabbos. That's why we recite Hallel, to be able to bridge that gap between the transcendent aspect of Hashem and the natural aspect of Hashem. The aspect of Hashem that deals with nature. Yeser Pirut, Muzber B'Toras Achsidus Barchava Shekayim Yisran B'Rosh Chodesh Gab Shabbos or B'Shabbos Gab Rosh Chodesh. Each one has an advantage in comparison to the other. Ha Yisran Shal Shabbos Gab Rosh Chodesh or B'Kach Rosh Chodesh Muter Basiyas Malacha V'Yesh B'Yivim D'Choil. As we said before, there's no prohibition to do work on Rosh Chodesh. V'ilu Shabbos Aser Basiyas Malacha, because in that regard, L'fishul Na'il L'Gam N'Choil, it's so way higher than the weekday, so we're prohibited from doing work on Shabbos. The very fact that we may do work on Rosh Chodesh, that itself is an advantage over Shabbos. How come? Nirin uvn dechoil avol benister himnes. Rosh Chodesh is about engaging with the world and being aware and having within that engagement with the world the permeating nature of miracles, which is what the Hallel is all about. Lefichach harigam amiras Hallel b'Rosh Chodesh v'isar asiyas malacha b'Rosh Chodesh b'nashim, that women have this prohibition to do work, like I mentioned before. Einam ella minig. Why are they only accustomed? Because the miraculous is concealed. The Rebbe references something that he speaks about many times, that hakafis on Simchas Torah is only a minig, it's only a custom. But a custom that Jews came up with, that means it came from them, from their devotion, has in it a power that's even greater than something that they are obligated to do. Usually we look at, well, it says in the Torah, you have to do it. That's higher. Custom. It's only a custom. The Rebbe turns it around on its head and says, a custom means I didn't have to do it, but my love for Hashem is so powerful, my devotion to Hashem is so great, that I had to bring in this custom. In a similar vein, this custom of women not doing work is not something to be sneezed at. It's a custom, and therefore it has that great power and energy to it. But the Hallel Rosh Chodesh is considered a custom, and because of that, we say only a half Hallel, whereas in Yom Tov and on Chanukah we say a complete Hallel, because the Rosh Chodesh is like an in-between place. So it's an in-between place, so the Hallel is only a custom. As opposed to Chanukah, or as opposed to Yom Tov, the Hallel comes with its full force, so we say a full Hallel. It's not just custom, it's halach. As ha-yisron shel Rosh Chodesh l'gabe Shabbos nitin lahasber bedugmas ha-yisron shel Chag HaPurim l'gabe sholosh regalim u'mishum kach darke shel Simchas Purim misha'ad lo yada davar she'einon u'moitzim l'gabe kol ha-chagim l'mroish u'mitzvasim b'simcha adrabe b'yom tov lo yamshch b'yayin b'simcha v'chol. We find that Purim has a powerful joy greater than any other Yom Tov. Any other Yom Tov is not, we're supposed to be careful in not overdoing with the wine. When it comes to Purim, we go over the top. Because Purim really is in some ways more powerful than all the other Yom Tov. Seemingly, like every Yom Tov where we're celebrating Hashem's miraculous salvation of the Jewish people, we should have said Hallel on Purim just like other times. The Gemara gives over there three answers. One of the answers is because we're still in exile. We're still slaves of Achashverosh. The simple meaning is, in other times that we said Hallel, we became eventually released from that particular problem. We were completely out of it. What happened then after the days of Purim? They didn't go back to Eretz Yisrael. They were still under the control of a foolish king, or according to some opinions, even a wicked king. So it's not like, things are theoretically still very precarious. So you don't say Hallel. The Rebbe is going to give a deeper concept to what it means. Akate Avdei Achashverosh Onan, we're still servants of Achashverosh. Mashmus shal teretzu shenes Purim hayim lubish beteva hayitzoyrech levakish ulashpia al Achashverosh sheyaser sagzera v'gam la'acher mekein nishru Avdei Achashverosh leficha cheinoimrim hal bepurim. If something is too natural, we don't say Hallel. Like in the middle of the days of the week, we don't say Hallel because it's too natural. When we say Akate Avdei Achashverosh Onan, that means everything is going natural. The whole miracle of Purim, we call it a miracle, but externally it was all natural events. There was no bolt of lightning coming down and killing off Haman. There was no super miraculous event that made Achashverosh change his mind. So therefore, it's all about nature. We said when it's about nature, like the weekday, we don't say Hallel. It's only when there's something that's transcending nature. Mahava Chisaron ve'einoim nem halal, aval me'idach yisehi Mahava Yisrain, shekein oir al-kiu kazeh, shehikif is ateva atzmai. The Rebbe in many places elaborates upon this, that even though one could say that it shows on a very decreased level of divine energy, that it's completely concealed in nature, on the other hand, it also shows how Hashem could manipulate nature. An example one could give between, there's like the open miracles that we learned in this week's parsha, last week's parsha, where next week's parsha, where Hashem totally shattered the entire Egyptian monarchy and the rulership and the government and the people. What did he do over there? He broke nature in the expression of Chassidus. That's like saying, let's say you're playing a game of chess with someone. It's my chess set. I could say, you know what? It's my chess set. It's my rules. We're going to do it my way, and I'm just taking my chess set, we're going home. That's what Hashem did with Mitzrayim. Hashem said, it's my world, my rules, water, blood, frogs, darkness, max b'chayra, split the sea. We're not going to play by your rules. Purim was saying something else. Even though it seems that I'm losing, I can take the rules of chess, turn it around, and win. Purim, Hashem took the laws of nature, whereby the laws of nature, the rules of nature, the Jewish people should have been annihilated under Haman and Achashverosh, took that very scenario without breaking anything in nature and causing nature itself, concealed within nature itself, using nature's own rules to defeat the enemy of the Yid. That is, to a certain degree, much more powerful than a miracle like on Hanukkah, where something was supposed to light for one night, lit for 8 nights. Or a few managed to kill off the many, and so on. So he's saying, last paragraph on 191. Purim heir ornai lekazeh shanes hu beteva atzmoi ubedugma kazu yisron Rosh Chodesh al gabe Shabbos. Similar to what Purim has, greater than the rest of Yom Tovim, because it has this idea of being in nature and ruling and controlling nature. Rosh Chodesh, which is still a day of work, has this much more in nature power over Shabbos. Minhag Yisra Asiyas Malacha b'Rosh Chodesh hu dafke b'noshim she'em bedugmas haguf v'loy ba'anoshim she'em bedugmas haneshama. It says Avram Avinu was similar to the soul, and Sarah was similar to the body. And to such a degree, Avram was told, you should listen to the body. But still in all, the body is more engaged with the physical, and the soul is more engaged on its own with the spiritual. Of course, it's the job of the body, the soul, to use the body to gain in the spiritual. Mi she'ein shakor binyani oilam ein tzarech zehirus v'heker v'mida kairaba shekein b'lav ha'chein shayach lekach ub'miyuchad la'acher shu shayach le'inim menugid v'kasher elov b'yachas l'davar muchshi ein tzarech b'rayis dadius machutz. So when you're engaged with the physical more, the physical body is more involved with the physical, that needs more protection. That needs more of a type of barrier of preventative medicine. And these are things that are like, you don't need proofs for this. A certain chassid was asked, does your Rebbe can he see the future? What's to make a difference? He could see the future, he can't see the future. Always to be among different chassidim, of different Rebbes used to say, my Rebbe knows this and this, my Rebbe could do that and that, and my Rebbe did this and this miracle. He says, it makes no difference. Yoidei anishu Rebbe. What I know is that this person is a Rebbe. Either a Rebbe needs to have this capability of being able to see the future, or he doesn't need it. If my Rebbe has it, that means this is a part and parcel of being a Rebbe. If he doesn't have it, that means you can be a Rebbe without having it. So what do I care? It doesn't make a difference to me. Does my Rebbe have Ruach HaKodesh or not? The Rambam writes down a very basic thing. The reason why we believe in Moshe Rabbeinu's relating the stories of what happened is not because he performed miracles. Throughout history, there were many charlatans and many people that came and performed miracles. If we would follow every person that performs a miracle, there wouldn't be any Yiddishkeit left. Rather, it was because millions of Yidden saw Moshe Rabbeinu go up on Har Sinai, heard Hashem speak to Moshe Rabbeinu, and that was why they were convinced. Not because of the blood, not because of this, not because of that, and that's why we accept the Torah. Kach sipar Rebbe k'shay yeled v'lamed b'cheder Shalo samalamed Reb Shimshon ma'ahev lo in pari l'bein achedim sh'nost lo makis her lo moifsim v'yitamed mischaret al hakoil hamalamed on lo tirutzim shoynim al adavar adayin lo niskabel etzlo. When the Frierdiker Rebbe was in the cheder, he asked, why did Pari get this special attention, if you will, from Hashem, that Hashem focused on him and did all these different signs and gave him over the head, and then he regretted, and then he went back on it. And why this whole production? Hashem could have easily taken the Jews miraculously out of Mitzrayim in one shot. Why this whole give and take? Besides, Hizbullah Malamed Sashoini Moshe Yechasid Davke Chabadin. ולכן לחיפש מויפס, הוא רוצה להביא תורה וידיעס הלכות, שכן שיר שעלול ליאס השיילה מה שמוי. וכשיהיה לו הדברים האמורים, יקבלו אצל בני ישראל. Moshe was a chassid, a Lubavitcher. He didn't need miracles. He didn't look for miracles. Hashem, like I mentioned last week on Shabbos, offered Moshe miracles for Pari. What Moshe wanted is, what should I tell the Jewish people when they ask me, what is Hashem's name? He wanted, as a true Rebbe wants, or as a true Chassid wants, to bring forth godliness. That's why he asked, what's your name? He wants to know the manifestation of the divine. He wanted to know godliness become revealed. Moshe knew we won't need miracles, or we don't need miracles. If Hashem wants, we could all go out immediately. No miracles necessary. Pari lahem in achara moifsim, v'lachen kasher hoysa haravacha chazer shuv l'suri l'tivui mekoyme ha'koydem. Pari is the opposite of a chassid, and he needs miracles. He wants miracles. And as soon as the miracle stops, as soon as the plague stops, he goes back to his previous thing, because that's the nature of miracles. This is also an answer for many, many people that ask, why doesn't Hashem perform miracles anymore? If Hashem would perform miracles, we would all be religious. It's not that way. You see the Jewish people in the desert, or you see Pari in Mitzrayim, he experienced all these different miracles. Didn't help. Because at the moment of the miracle, you get all excited and get all over the top and whatever. And then afterwards, okay, whatever. You go back to normal. There's even stories with the Rebbe, with people that the Rebbe made miracles for. And okay, it was very exciting and a miracle, and they might have taken on a mitzvah to do because of it, but that was it. Okay. And stopped over there. We had a teacher that was an English teacher that had a story with his child's vision, and he started putting on film because the Rebbe advised him to put on film, and then his child's vision was repaired, and then afterwards he got a little bit lax in it, and his child's vision started faltering, so he rightly started again. But he didn't become a totally Torah observant Jew. So we see that miracles don't necessarily openly, it doesn't change the person. Change has to come from awareness, from knowledge of God. Like Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to know, what's your name? I want to be able to reveal God to them. The Frierdiker Rebbe was was finally satisfied. Kach gam bedugma zu, ishe darke lichbesh levar lichbesh is a oilam ein tzarech lemoifs is a heker. Someone that's on top of the world, ruling the world, so he doesn't need any miracles. V'ilam lebashim ba'olam tzrichim laheker, those that are more engaged with the world, they need to have the prohibition of work on Rosh Chodesh. Yom HaShabbos koil simei HaShavua haboim. Now this original Sikha was actually not said on Parshas Boy. It was actually said on Shabbos, that was, I think, Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Or Shabbos, yeah. And because of that, the Rebbe is going to connect all of this with the month of Kislev, mamish at the end of the year. So he says, Shabbos includes all the following days of the week. Similar to what we said about Rosh Chodesh, the Rosh, the head, includes. Shabbos also has that type of thing. I believe somewhere even the Rebbe asks a question, why isn't Shabbos called the Rosh HaShavua? For the same reason that Rosh Chodesh is called the Rosh Chodesh. But I don't remember right now the answer. V'amim nehemar she'Shabbos kelelas rak shloishes hayam marishonim ad yom revi v'elu shloish hayam ma'acherim sheyachim l'Shabbos haba u'ba'amim nehemar she'Shabbos kelelas kol hashvua haba. Sometimes we speak about the first 3 days of the week have to do with the previous Shabbos, the second 3 days have to do with the next Shabbos, but sometimes it says Shabbos includes all of the days. L'or zayis Shabbos kelelas as kol hashavua Nichlol b'Shabbos hanoichis Rosh Chodesh Kislev. I'm sorry. So it wasn't Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, but it was a Shabbos mevarchim Chodesh Kislev. So therefore, that Shabbos was already including the Rosh Chodesh Kislev that's coming about. And Rosh Chodesh, we said, includes in it all the days of the month. Hakel is called a Chodesh, which is Tes Kislev, Yom HaYiledes, Yom Mistalch Shad Morem Tzoid, both the birthday and the Pascha in the middle of Rebbe. Yud Kislev, Yom Geulah Shad Morem Tzoid, his day of redemption of middle of Rebbe. Yud Tes Kislev, Elul Rabbe, Bloshnat Morem Zokin Shalab Magid. It was the great celebration of the yard side, the passing of the Alter Rebbe's Rebbe, the Magid of Mezrich, and it's also Shechuru Shalab Morem Zokin was on the 19th of Kislev, the release of the Alter Rebbe. Chav Dal Kislev, the 24th of Kislev, Haysafa Mechodesh B'Yisoid B'Yasheni. The day before Chanukah was a day when they increased and they had solidified the Mizbeach and so on, and the in founding the second Beis Hamikdash. Chafei Kislev Shabbai Nigbar Malach Samishlan. It was also in the times in the desert. It was when the Mishkan was completed, even though they didn't actually erect it until Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Afterwards, Hashem repaid that day that wasn't marked as a celebration to have a celebration on the 25th of Kislev on Chanukah. All these things, Tes Kislev, Yud Kislev, Yutes Kislev, Chavdal Kislev, Chavei Kislev, all of these special dates need blessing. They need a beginning. And what's their beginning? Shekein min Shabbos mizbarchen kol yamin. From Shabbos, we know all the days of the week receives a blessing. For Rosh Chodesh Kislev b'chlal zeh shu kol es kol anal. The same thing on the first day of the month of Kislev.